Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It is 7 o'clock. We might give it another minute or two to let everyone sign in. But thank you for tuning in. Grace and I were just chatting. I think this is our fourth or fifth year together and presenting this amazing information for you all out there. So we're excited to share the content, or Grace is excited. She's my expert extraordinaire. I'll just give it a few more minutes for people to sign in. And then we'll get started. Maybe like one more minute just to give a few people to sign in. We need like break music.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't want me singing, I know.
No, agreed.
For people coming in, I was going to put up the screen. Yeah. They can scan the QR code.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you again for everyone who's tuning in. We will go ahead and get started and then just let others tune in as as the night progresses. So thank you for coming. My name is Julie Busby. I'm the founder of Busby Group here in Chicago. We are a residential real estate team in Chicago. And one of our favorite things that we like to talk about is Chicago schools. Oh, sorry. Let me turn off my volume of my phone. Is Chicago schools. That is obviously a very important topic when someone is looking into a home or a condo. And so we talk about it all the time. And I met Grace as I am on the board of Neighborhood Parent Network, which is also another great resource for Chicago families. And that's how Grace and I met. And I'm so thankful that we have met because I have learned so many amazing things about the Chicago school system. And I will say I will boast on Chicago because I think we're one of the only public school systems in a major metropolitan city that you have choices. And I know Grace will dive into that. And it's just very exciting. So Grace is with Chicago School GPS, and she can speak about both public and private school systems in Chicago. And so Grace, I'll let you start to present. And just so everyone knows, we do have a Q&A at the end. So feel free to save your questions. You can also write them in the chat. On this private chat and regular chat, feel free either one to send a message, and then Grace, there will be a Q&A at the end. So Grace, I'll let you take the floor.
Thank you, Julie. And it's always great to, every year we have this tradition. And because, this is an age-old question about how to navigate these schools in Chicago. But it is, as Julie said, it's a great, great place to raise your kids. And not only is it a very dynamic city, so much going on, a lot of culture, but beyond that, there's a lot of different ways to educate your child, public and private. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about tonight. And just, I just know I'm Grace Lee Sawin. I don't have any affiliation with CPS or private schools. I'm just a mom who has been through this. My kids are older, so I've been through this, definitely all the way through. And then you too, parents, can absolutely navigate this successfully. So the webinar is being recorded, and at the same time, if you would like, there's a way for. I have a lot of links that all this information. The one thing to know with, especially with CPS, is the more things, they change. They constantly change every year. There's different rules, different processes. However, so that's what I try and send out in our monthly little newsletter. So if you scan that, trying to be very high tech here, then you can get on that list, and I can also send follow up after this, some of the latest and greatest that we have. Understand. But let's just get straight into the what about Chicago elementary schools. Chicago, absolutely, with all of the different types, public and private, you have just a real wide range of schools. So even within your family, there could be kids, right? Different older siblings, younger siblings, twins. One can learn differently, style-wise or whatever, than another child. Just know that Chicago itself, the elementary school system, is different. I grew up on the East Coast, actually, and it's different from how I grew up. I really like it here, where it is all the way up to 8th grade is elementary. So where some places, a separate middle school or junior high or whatnot, Chicago, public and private, goes up to 8th grade, which is great because that is such a long time that families really do get to be a part of a part of the whole system, and really get to be, engaged in the school. So it's wonderful. Love that. At private schools typically start before kindergarten, which is either 3 or 4 years old. So that whole time range, you're a little bit longer even involved in the school. Public schools, CPS definitely is something more of the 5. The kindergarten is 5 by September 1st. So they're pretty definitely hard and fast. There's not really wiggle room to hold your child back per se. However, with that September 1st cutoff, there is an opportunity for fall birthday kids, September 2nd to December 31st, could potentially have them not have to repeat, preschool again. You could have them possibly start by showing that they are ready for kindergarten because they have done a preschool program. They do a cognitive and a developmental evaluation through CPS. Private schools, they don't necessarily have a formal process. So private schools may just do their own little evaluation, but public schools, it is very, very much a part of the kind of protocol that you do have to, if you want to start where you have a fall birthday 5-year-old who wants to not wait to start kindergarten, after September 1st, and then a 6-year-old by September 1st would have to go into 1st grade. So anyway, this is just, that's very, a process, but there's no red shirting. There's no opportunity for, if you wanted to hold your child back and not have them start, and just know that they don't have that. But for 2nd grade on up, it doesn't matter what your child's birthday was. So for public schools, for CPS, as long as your child completed a 1st grade program somewhere, then CPS doesn't care what your child's birthday was for entering 2nd grade on up. Keep an open mind when considering schools, not just visiting schools, but just when considering schools, because there are so many different types. Schools are organic. They are not static. They are not, schools are not like, oh yes, this school's always been this way. And, it hasn't changed, improved. It does. It absolutely, schools are very reflective of the resources put into it, right? And so when you hear about areas where they're high income, high educational attainment of the parents, et cetera, that all filters into the school. And so the areas, with Busby Group helping you find places around the city to settle, there are areas that are changing quite a bit. And so with that comes changes in school. So I just want families to not necessarily, you're moving into an area, it has gentrified, let's say, and maybe the family that's been there for 40 years never sent their children to the neighborhood school down the street. But since those 40 years, that school has gotten a lot of support, and different families are moving in with means, et cetera. That school could be very different than what this family that has been here so long and didn't realize. So just keep an open mind, absolutely. And cast a wide net because of the fact that there are so many options. You really want to be open to that. So, and there's processes for that. So we know that families are definitely looking at schools, not just necessarily one category. Maybe they're just starting to see, what's the difference between public or private. The main thing we say is that, certainly private schools do have that tuition piece that can vary greatly between what type of private school it is. Those that are part of an archdiocese are subsidized by the archdiocese. So the private schools with the lower tuition level are typically Catholic schools. And then there are independent schools that have, a varying range of tuitions. Public schools have no tuition, but they may have a school fee or some, usually much less than a tuition, but that school fee could be $100, $200 a student. So that's something, but it's never required. If a family cannot pay the school fee, it's okay. They can still attend. Otherwise, there's a lot more similarities and differences in facilities or small schools, big schools, pedagogy, right? There are international baccalaureate private schools and international baccalaureate public schools, Montessori private schools, Montessori public schools. There's language immersion or, in the private schools, German, Italian, those types of French, versus in public schools, there is dual language programs. Inter-American is a Spanish, English immersion, dual language. And then for sure, there's definitely some schools, siblings, we usually say, absolutely the private schools wants all the tuitions. The public schools, most of those programs definitely want the whole family to stay together, magnet schools, neighborhood schools, etc. But test-based programs do not. The only ones with tests to get in are selective enrollment public programs, but they do not have a sibling boost, sibling preference, whatever you want to call it. So everybody, even twins, one twin may test in, one twin may not for those test-based public school programs. So there's no sibling preference there. And then there are definitely programs that go, if you only want to do this once, go from the pre-K or kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. And there's quite a few, quite a few in private. And then in public, there are 3, Ogden, Alcott, and Disney 2. Okay. Excuse me. So factors to consider in choosing. That is definitely something that for pre-K, maybe it was close to home, close to work. No tickle all day, and I have a tickle right now. Anyway, family considerations, in terms of siblings, as I said, but, for factors for elementary school, that is such this wider, longer time. For some people, K-8 is 9 years. Pre-K through 8 could be, 10, 11 years that you're involved with the school. So, excuse me. So just know that this long time period, you're going to have a 5-year-old to a 14-year-old is a very big difference. So definitely be mindful. Before you weren't necessarily looking at extracurriculars or sports, right? So all of those things are something that is you may be starting to look for that you did not look for in the preschool level. So know that that's going to be a factor. And just because you're involved with the school for so much longer, these are other things. Now, also, the beauty of Chicago is you are not stuck at a school. You can absolutely have, for a time period when they're younger, the school's a good fit. Otherwise, you can start looking at schools at other time periods. So we'll talk about that as well. But to really find out if this is going to be a good fit, tour school, right? A coffee, whatever they call it, open house, all those, whatever the nomenclature is, for sure, be able to take a tour if you can. Everybody can talk about a school, say all sorts of things, but until you see it, it's very personal, right? So your best friend can say, like, this school is the only school, don't even think about it, don't even worry about anything else. But you tour it and it's like, there's just something about it, doesn't feel right. That's okay. Or you can go to a school that no one's talked about. You tour it, it feels wonderful. You can, be confident sending your child there, because if there is a time period that you need to make a change, then you can make a change. Usually it's that 1 year ahead that you have, an opportunity to put out feelers for something else. But at the same time, there's so many schools. So we don't want families to fixate on like 2 or 3 schools and that's it. But know that there are open houses and tours happening throughout, usually definitely during the school year. Some of them, it doesn't matter. You can tour at any point. You could be not even having kids. We know some families who've done that. Or you're about to, apply and you're touring like 5 or 10 schools or whatnot. But just try and space it out a little bit for sure. But there are other ways to take a temperature of a school or to get a feel for the culture and climate. Social media post-pandemic has been helpful. So there's a little bit more on that, more that you can see that's going on in the classroom. Local school council, that is for CPS schools. It's a elected school board that has parents and community members, teachers, etc. So that has monthly meetings. They do have minutes. You can take a look at what's going on in the school. Friends of our parent-teacher organizations or parent community, liaisons and whatnot. So those are also monthly meetings, so you can get a feel. But absolutely, if we have time at the end, I'll show you a calendar that we keep. CPS has some. The Michigan Independent Schools Association of Independent Schools also has their own calendar. So there's a lot of opportunities to find out, what's out there. So we definitely, absolutely recommend taking a tour. When does this whole process have to happen? So for anyone who's, we're focusing on elementary here, but honestly, there are so many different entry points. But for elementary, it's basically 5 is CPS. That's when it starts. But as we said, private schools will start at 3 or 4. Nursery, sometimes what private schools call 3, and JK, junior kindergarten, is what they call 4 years old. And then certainly it's not the only time to get in, right? There is attrition. There are families making a change. You can absolutely, private schools, maybe there's a few, more than a handful of families leaving for a free option at kindergarten. And so there may be spaces opening up for those. And then certainly 4th grade and CPS does tend to have a slightly higher teacher to student ratio. So they automatically have 3 or 4 spots open in 4th grade for magnet schools and test-based programs. And then in private schools, they're a totally different building for, let's say, Latin, where they have 10, 15, let's say, spots of 5th grade, where all the 4th graders cannot fill in their 5th grade spots. They're going to get new families, but far fewer families are applying at that age. So it could be a better odd. And then 6th grade Parker Lab, they also have an automatic increase in their class size. And then 7th grade for CPS has something called academic centers. Those are middle school programs housed in high schools that a 7th grader who has tested in, it's selective enrollment, a 7th grader is getting 9th grade level work. It's actually all the programming is in the high school, getting 9th grade level work and therefore earning high school credit starting in 7th grade. By the end of 10th grade, those academic center kids are pretty much done with their high school requirements. And then they, we don't recommend anybody go to college at the end of 10th grade. So 11th and 12th grade, they're able to spread out their high school career, if you will, to a second science, a second, music and a dance, an art and, computer science, etc. So that is definitely something to understand. We'll talk about CPS tiers in a second, but that is something to understand. It's only applicable for entry years of citywide programs, and testing, if it's done, is usually that winter, a year before you're going into a program. All right, we're going to talk public and private. But the public is the more complicated side. So we're going to spend a little bit more time on that. The main thing to know is that every address in the city, as well as in the suburbs, every address of, a residential address has an assigned neighborhood school. And CPS is no different. CPS does, where you live, where your primary residence is, will have an assigned K-8 school. However, we want to emphasize the building the school building that your residence is next to or close to may not be a neighborhood school. So there are standalone magnet schools or standalone selective enrollment schools. So just know that the building of the school that you're close to may not be the assigned neighborhood school. Also, what does a family utilize for their primary address if they may have several properties? CPS is very adamant about it's where your child lays their head Monday through Friday. So even if like grandma, has a residence and you like that neighborhood school that grandma's house is at, it has to be where your child lays their head Monday through Friday. And then just know that CPS itself, Chicago Public Schools, is called an open enrollment school system, which means that while you do have an assigned neighborhood school that doesn't require any application, doesn't require a deadline, nothing like that, you could, family could apply for their child to start kindergarten, free schooling, anywhere else in the city if they put an application in a year ahead. And that means that, or that whole process of being able to choose any school to go to school at is called an open enrollment school system. This is different than the suburbs, where your house is at. That is a school. There, different zoned areas for based on where you physically live. For Chicago, it's as long as you live in Chicago, your child has the opportunity to go to many different schools by applying. Otherwise, your neighborhood school does not have an application, never has a deadline. Maybe you want to move into it, but there's a delay in the construction or the handover or the lease. So maybe 2 weeks later after school starts, then you can finally prove residency. Then your child can start school 2 weeks later, but they're able to start at any time that you can prove residency. All right, then there are all these terms in CPS. This is why it seems very confusing, where a neighborhood school, sometimes it's called attendance area school, sometimes called a magnet cluster school. The word cluster is another way to say neighborhood. However, the word magnet is a way to say that, okay, this is a program that is being paid for by CPS to, bring a focus area into the school. There are neighborhood schools with added focus areas, like a Blaine, Fine and Performing Arts Magnet Cluster School, then there are magnet schools without the word cluster after it, like a Hawthorne Scholastic Academy. So the ones without the word cluster after it are specific focus area schools. They have a budget to bring that focus area. For Hawthorne, it is Scholastic Academy. For them is adding in an extra teacher for math and reading for all the grades. So they reduce their class sizes for those two subject areas by having their money go towards an extra teacher for those subject areas. So these schools without the cluster after it are strict lottery-based admissions, no testing, but lottery. And they're, as I said, throughout the city. Then you can apply via lottery for a neighborhood school that's not your own. That's open enrollment we've talked about. And then charter or contract schools, those are tuition free, but they have a private entity that they're not under CPS's umbrella. Typically, the families we work with, they do have good neighborhood schools and magnet schools and everything nearby. So most of my families I've not really worked with have gone the charter school route. But just know that they do exist. They have their own application, and it's just a lottery. And then this last grouping of schools are those that require a test. So test-based classical programs, regional gifted center programs, and as I said, those middle school programs. These all, your child has to actually be active in taking a test. And then that's how the seats are awarded. So some of these are standalone, meaning that they are a building all unto themselves, like a Skinner North, an Edison, a Decatur. And some of them are co-sharing with a neighborhood program like a Skinner West, a Bell, Pritzker, that sort of thing. And the red ones, these red ones here, magnet schools, classical, regional gifted center, academic centers, those are the only ones where the term CPS tier ever comes into play, and it's only for the entry years of those programs. These are called citywide programs. They're open to everybody in the city of Chicago. So these CPS tiers or socioeconomic tiers, again, only relevant for citywide program, only relevant for the entry year of that when they're seating all these students in these programs. And the reason why they exist is for a citywide program. CPS says we want this program to reflect the diversity of the city. So in order to do that, let's say there's 28 kids coming in kindergarten. CPS would like for these programs to have a range of socioeconomic tiers. So tier 4 is a high socioeconomic tier. Tier 1 is a low socioeconomic tier. Essentially, these socioeconomic tiers are calculated based on census tracts. Census tracts are bigger than a block, smaller than a zip code. And they're only relevant, again, for the entry year, usually K, or there's 2 first grade programs for Regional Gifted Center, Beaubien and Keller. Academic centers are 7th grade. But anyway, only consider for the entry year of a program, that's when you're filling in all these seats, right? And you're trying to pull by, having a distribution of the seats in there. So this is just a map showing a little bit of, all the socioeconomic tiers turned on for an address, 1 North State. I just typed in, okay, when you type in any address in the school locator tool for CPS, what happens is they do, the school locator shows you what the K through 8 school is, what the 9 through 12 school is, what tier you're in for that particular year. Tiers do change every year. And then there are these 6 factors that never ask race, but do kind of quantify where tier 4 is this dark gray. High socioeconomics where there's medium family income, educational attainment of the parents, more dual versus single parent households, owner versus renter occupied homes. English is possibly the predominant language at home, and the performance of the local area school. And then tier 1 would be this light greenish, pale green. That is, those areas have lower values for those. So that is, again, tiers are something you hear a lot about, but really I like to emphasize they're only relevant for the entry year of those citywide programs. But some of those citywide programs are called magnet schools. Magnet schools have no test. They are lottery based. So a Drummond, a Newberry, Math and Science, Galileo, etc. These are all no boundary. You apply to them because you like the programming. And so those, it's because it's no test. They do have, for the magnet programs, they do have some considerations for the tiers, but it's only after siblings are considered first. And then if you live within 1.5 miles from a magnet school in the entry year, entry year is only for that proximity. 40% left over after siblings is given over to the families who are within 1.5 miles. And then the tiers come into play for those schools that I mentioned that are no boundary. Otherwise, you can also put on an application. It's called the choice application, which is just lottery based. Other programming, neighborhood schools that aren't your own, whether they're called an open enrollment or magnet cluster. You can put up to 20 schools on this lottery process. They are all going to be run independently. These 20 schools, you can get multiple offers. So maybe your child puts down 20 schools, but they actually get offered for 4. You cannot send your child to 4 schools simultaneously in a school year. So you are going to have to turn down 3, let's say you take one, but that one that you got out of magnet schools and open enrollment and magnet cluster, the one that you got is not exactly out of the just 20 your top choice for your child. Maybe you haven't heard from one that's your top choice, and that's okay, because you're still on the wait list for that school. Any school you haven't heard from, you're still maintain the wait list. And so you could actually start your child. They can go to the school. They can, make friends, have homework, cubby, everything like that. And then 3 weeks after school starts, you could hear from one of those other schools that you were really interested in. So by that time, you could actually accept that school, say, oh, great, I was waiting for this. And then unenroll them where they are. And so that whole process of waitlist goes quite a long time, from initial notifications or spring to actually the next, January. So it's a long time period, but know that these 20 lottery-based selections, whether it's magnet schools or just neighborhood schools that aren't your own, those neighborhoods of schools are on your own. They don't have, by the way, any tiers, as I said before. But these whole lottery based process on the choice application is 20 independent lotteries that are run. Okay, so it keeps on going. All right, and then the selective enrollment is the other parallel application that you can put through the portal, and I'll show you about the steps for applying. But basically, there's two parallel applications that every child can have, up to 20 for the lottery-based, and then up to 6 programs for the test-based selective enrollment elementary school. SEAS, that's what it stands for, selective enrollment elementary school. And these are up to 6 programs. You are going to have to rank them. This one has no sibling consideration, and it does deal with tiers in the entry year only, where 30% of the incoming kindergarten class is irrespective of tiers. They could all be the high socioeconomic tier 4, let's say. But the remaining 70% of the incoming kindergarten class is going to be equally divided by the 4 tiers. So 70% divided by 4 is 17.5% of the incoming kindergarten class of, let's say, Pritzker. Regional Gifted Center, 17.5% have to be high scores from tier 4, 17.5% high scores from tier 3, and then tier 2 and tier 1. But 30% of Pritzker's incoming kindergarten class could be all tier 4, right? High socioeconomic tier. So 30% could be tier 4, 17.5% have to be high scores from tier 4. I usually like to emphasize that these programs that a family say, oh, I'm in tier 4 and it's going to be harder, my child has to score higher. Well, potentially 47.5% of that incoming kindergarten class could be tier 4 students. What you have for selective enrollment, just so you know, there's 2 nomenclatures going around. One's called a classical program, Skinner North, Skinner West, Decatur, Brownsville Classical, Poe, etc. Those are programs that CPS defines as being high achievement and liberal arts. And then regional gifted centers are another nomenclature you'll hear. And those are like an Edison, a Bell, a Leonard. These are programs that have they say, CPS says, emphasize critical thinking, problem solving, logical reasoning. And they're about 1 to 2 years ahead by the time you graduate 8th grade versus classical schools are about 1 year ahead by the time you graduate 8th grade. Really, I say don't get hung up on the different types of schools. They are named differently more because the exam to get in is different. So it's an achievement-based exam for the classical school. In reading and math, if your 4-year-old is a little ahead of his or her preschool peers for reading and math, then that will be picked up on the classical exam. But if your 4-year-old is not reading yet, but they have an aptitude for learning, those are the kind of questions that the Regional Gifted Center exam is picking up. So the aptitude for, maybe pattern recognition, circle, square, circle, blank. What is that next shape, right? And then really, so there don't get hung up on those, because if you're testing for kindergarten, your child is automatically given both types of questions in one sitting. They don't have to, they're just automatically doing that, even if you only have regional gifted centers or only have classical schools. But most families have a combination to make up the 6. You are ranking them because let's say your child is the highest test scorer in the city of Chicago, then the highest test score, all the seating or the selection of seats goes from all the kids are testing. And then those kids are all lined up from top test score on down. And then so the top test score for that cohort of testers that winter, the top scores pooled. What does that child have for their first choice? They can qualify for all 6, but the computers only give them the first choice because the top score will, actually have the points for all of this. So that's why families are told to put your true first choice. I usually say, hopefully no 4-year-old has gone through testing yet. So let's just assume your child is going to be the top scorer in the city of Chicago. So go ahead and, what is your true first choice? What is your second choice, etc. So that's kind of the parallel application that's running with, there's a choice up to 20 programs that are all independent waitlist, and then up to 6. This is a single offer though. I think I have that on another list. Oh, this is just showing you what there's a finite number of these programs, these selective enrollment programs throughout the city, from north to south. Some red are standalone, meaning it's the only program in the building. 2 of these are 2 classes per grade, but everything else is 1 class per grade. And just know that there's very limited number of seats, 28, 30 seats tops. And that, besides is one with 2 classrooms. So it's not a lot of seats. Some are phasing out. Coonley's phasing out. McPherson is phasing in. So just know that these schools may change a little bit here and there. Which ones are offering? Morton is also new. But there are very few number of seats for that. So it's not the only way to get your child a enriching curriculum and moving a little faster. There's definitely neighborhood schools that can do that, magnet schools that can do that. But for some reason, families put a lot of stock in those. But they're not the only way to get your child, challenged. So for CPS, just to sum up in terms of the process, it is 1 application online. This year it opened September 13th. It will close November 9th. So you're creating an account online, 1 per family, but each student will have their own account. You're applying to basically 2 separate pools of applications. One's called Choice. Nothing for your child to do. It's just a lottery, put up to 20 schools. The other one that your child does have to do something is C's, or Selective Enrollment Elementary School, and they do have to come in for testing, and you can only pick up to 6, and you're ranking those. You're not ranking these 20 at all. It's confusing in the portal. It'll keep on saying choice 1, choice 2. It's just a counter. Just think of it as a counter. If you are testing, though, you need to pick a test date. If you are doing C's, the computer automatically only shows you test dates once it knows you're picking these schools and these programs. So you can't test first and then put schools down. You have to put schools down, and then the window will say, please choose a test date. So just know that there's no, the November 9th, they're going to close the portal, but the test dates can be beyond that, but you have to choose your test date before the portal closes. And then some families like, oh, I don't want to test my child until a couple months later because he'll be a little bit older and he'll be able to know more things. But the test is graded according to how old your child was when they sat for the test. So if you wait 2 months, they're also going to be graded against students who are 2 months older too. The deadline is very hard and fast. Do not miss it. Do not, I guarantee you the internet's going to go out or whatever. So try and not wait to the last minute. But right now it's 5 p.m., November 9th. And then if the only ones that you need to rank are the selective enrollments, but if you need to re-rank because let's say you toured something between November 9th and December 1st, you can re-rank until December 1st. All right. When do you find out? You did all this online. You took your child down to test, if that was, what you were interested in. Spring, they just say spring 2024. There's no date. Spring is when you're going to find out. There's one notification type, if you will, or portal, I guess. You'll see it online. But you can get multiple offers for choice, only a single offer, selective enrollment. Waitlists do move throughout the spring and the summer for CPS. Choice, because it's multiple offers, it moves quite fast, actually. Selective enrollments also do move. Just know that there is a time to actually 2 to 3 weeks for visits in the initial application notification time. But then after that, the portal waitlist portal will be shorter, 48 hours after that initial time period. So you're going to have to return a yes or no. Do you accept this offer in a very short period of time after the initial time period? Okay, so private schools are definitely simpler. They are all tuition based, either independent school, private schools, and then religious privates. So the private schools, the main thing I say, private schools are private for a reason, right? So private schools absolutely, have a pedagogy, a reason for why they are founded, whether or not religion or a style of teaching. Waldorf is something that is Rudolf Steiner started it, 70, almost 100 years ago. They're a particular way of teaching and looping, the teacher loops with the students, very fine and gross motor skill oriented and developmentally appropriate. That is something that's only private schools. Versus, obviously a religious school, or maybe there's a progressive education or a international baccalaureate type of style. All of these are a reason, and you as a family have to understand what that reason is. And so it is very important to, understand. That's why private schools do want to have tours, right? And have you come and do a tour because it is part of why you have to say why you're interested in these schools. So tours, coffees, whatever they're called, are part of the application for a private school. They're usually a step one. They usually do take an RSVP. And so just know that that's part of it. But also know that a private school is crafting a class. So when they craft a class, they are absolutely selecting you as much as you are selecting them. One thing I will say with private schools, there are some small ones, there are some much larger ones. The largest private school in the city is Lab School. They have about 2,200 students from nursery 3 to 12th grade, so they're quite large. Then there are small private schools, one class per grade. So it just varies. And one class of like 18 students or 20 students, like a North Park Elementary. So these, small, large, however it is, they really need you. They're crafting a class. They want you to come. They're selecting you as much as you're selecting them. One thing I will say, most of them have maybe the Catholic schools. Okay, do you have a parish? Are you how much is faith important in your life? But and then some of the independent schools, maybe, okay, do you understand our philosophy? And that's what you want. But a lot of them, if you bring diversity to the table, a lot of them will for sure, have that as a big component that they want to increase their diversity in their class. In terms of, is there a central, system? Sometimes there's a central portal like Ravenna, some independent schools use. But just know that all the criteria, all the deadlines, everything are all different for private schools. So absolutely look at each private school to see what those criteria are. Some of them are very simple applications. One, page, just your child's birthday, where you guys live, etc. And that's about it. And then you can hear, a result. And then others are much more in depth. What is it? Our mission is this. What part of our mission aligns with your family and why? Or describe your child and what you want out of their education, etc. So some of them can be very in-depth applications, and some of them can be quite simple. But know that also, sometimes your child doesn't have to do anything, doesn't have to come and do anything. But there are other times where your child is being observed, whether it's in a small playgroup setting or they go to your preschool and observe your child to see if they're ready for the environment that this private school has. So they do want to evaluate. And sometimes there are interviews, parent interviews. What is it about our school? Why do you want to attend here? What do you expect? And also, what can you bring to our school? So those parent interviews, some of them don't have parent interviews. Some of them are quite extensive. So just know that when I say be honest to a point, I say this because in some schools, sometimes like a Montessori, it's not very well known for a lot of families, but they tour a Montessori school that goes up to 8th grade. They love the the three, it's a multi-age classroom, three, fours, and five, they love that preschool setting. But they're not sure, they don't know anybody who's gone through the middle school setting. There are some Montessoris that we go up to 8th grade. We don't want a family to use us just as a preschool. So these Montessoris will say, okay, they'll kind of interview. And if you're a little hesitant about that middle school, they've got all these other families who are interested in that school that they will, kind of say, maybe these people will leave us after preschool. So I always say, you've got a 3-year-old, 2-year-old, let's say, when you're applying, and maybe you don't think that it would be a good fit for middle school because you couldn't see yourself there, but maybe it is going to be a good fit for when your 2-year-old becomes a 12-year-old. So just know that things, situations, etc., you don't know how your child is going to be yet. So don't close the door by being too honest in those interviews. So, and then be gracious when turning down offers, because these, you may hear from a school, you've applied to a few, you say no, but potentially a situation can change and you may want to revisit that school. So don't close the door on that. Therefore, for notifications, when is all of that? Again, each school is different, but the timing does vary. January can be late spring. Private schools often, I would say more than just often, consistently notify earlier than public. Deposits are usually required at that acceptance. So the November 9th public school deadline is the earliest it's ever been for CPS. And I will say that, I think I asked them in one webinar, like, oh, it's the earliest it's ever been. Are you trying to release notifications earlier? And even if CPS were to release notifications earlier, private schools will absolutely change their notification time earlier, because they will just deposit. They want contracts signed before you're going to hear if you have a free option. So, but waitlists also do move because people are doing both, possibly. So let the school know your interest. If you don't get an offer, but you're put on a waitlist, please let the school know. They do not necessarily give you a waitlist number. CPS does give you a waitlist number, but these schools don't. So private schools don't. So if you're a squeaky wheel, they may put you on the top of the pile. But so don't close the door on future opportunities, as I said, because you may not know when you may want to revisit. Maybe you say no for preschool, but that school has a high school and you may want to revisit later for high school. So understand that. All right. So regardless of public or private, we ourselves, Chicago School GPS, we do preschool through college, actually, but we tell everybody, the school that you hoped your child would attend just may not have been a good fit for him or her, and that's okay. Definitely look at schools without preconceptions. There are absolutely all these types out there. You may not have been aware of them, or this may be a better fit for your child, etc. Because we do preschool through college, this point here is more salient for middle school, high school, etc. But it's not the name of the school that's going to propel your child into that next phase. It's what your child does at the school, right? It could be a fancy school with all the bells and whistles, but if your child is not taking advantage of anything and not engaging, then it's not going to help that child, right? Especially that high school or college piece. But don't be afraid to make a switch. We are in Chicago. It has so many school options. CPS schools are free to apply each year, free to test. Private schools, some may roll over that application fee. And your child or your needs may change over time. You can still be in the same house, but know that you can make a change for education, and that's fine, because no school is perfect. Definitely, absolutely, but you want to find a place that can align with the culture and climate that you would like. So understand that. We are Chicago School GPS, as I said earlier. I'm Grace Lee Solon, and we just, we help families find schools. We from preschool through college, public, private, and we absolutely can help you. A lot of times this is very overwhelming. We know that. So we absolutely want to try and filter down to what's important to your family, so we can work with families one-on-one to, we have a questionnaire on our website, what's important to your family. So we can definitely make this much more manageable through that process. So if you're coming in late, I do have a QR code that as we take questions, you can kind of scan, and that will give you there's a few links, every year they change some things. So I'll send out those links that are most relevant for this year, as well as put you on a newsletter, which will give you absolutely every year, every month, there's something going on, and you'll see a pattern. If you've got a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, I didn't do a little poll like what age ranges there are, but basically, you'll start to see a pattern every year. So Julie, I did want to leave time for questions, so let me know if there are any questions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Grace. It's always great and insightful to have you. So thank you as always. It looks like we had a few questions come in chatting. So one is, what about pre-K options? What is a good overview of which public schools have pre-K options?
So pre-K is all done by a separate portal, chicagoearlylearning.org. And then let me try and actually, let me share. Let me stop sharing that.
Yeah.
And I can definitely send out that link for sure. But Chicago Early Learning is the preschool option. So trying to see how to, here we go. So this is a portal. Preschool is in the spring when well, applications are open now for the current year, but for the next 24-25 year, they open them in the spring. So this is a lot of information on the Chicago Early Learning website. But that is something that in the spring, pre-K3 and pre-K4. Pre-K4 is what's also known as universal preschool. And universal preschool is free preschool schooling for anybody who's in the city of Chicago. You can see like where they are. If I do 1 North State Street, you can kind of, CPS will show, okay, this is the address you put. Light blue are community-based programs, and then dark blue are school-based programs. Green little dot means that there's available seats. And then, sorry, I squished down my so I could see things. But basically, if you, I think there's a way to, well, let me just do, I don't know, 1,000 North State, see if this one, yeah. So like you can kind of see as you go, some of the school-based, like this one here, Minear is full, but this one here, Lozano, may have a wait list. They will reset everything in the spring of 2024, and that's when you apply for that coming fall. So right now, these are all reflecting programs that have space possibly currently right now. So I don't know if that helped.
That's incredible. I feel like they built out that website even more recently.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's why I say things change, right? So it's like there's always going to be. Yep. So yeah,
love it. And then it looks like another question came in about an IEP. Now, if I remember this correctly, I think it's an individualized education program.
Yep. And so those are for students who do have learning differences that need to be addressed. The difference between an IEP and then another term is 504. 504 is an accommodation where, let's say, an allergy, or maybe needs to have a bouncy seat or sit near the front of the classroom. If those accommodations are met, then the child will get the same education as everybody else. An IEP will require a little bit more personal intervention. So an IEP could be, let's say for reading difference, or dyslexia, dysgraphia, or sometimes ADHD, et cetera. So there is 14. It's not called a diagnosis. They always say, don't call it a diagnosis because they're not in the business of diagnosing. That's what the doctors do. But whatever the differences are, that they call out, there's a evaluation, and it's a legal document that is, all throughout the United States. IEPs are written for students to have, legally bound, or the school districts have to follow that. But basically it is to create whatever conditions need to be met to, like, maybe pull out services for a reading specialist for X minutes per day. Those are then, after that is given, then the student will be on an even playing field. So the whole point of an IEP is to get it legally documented that your child will need, need these services, have these services met. It's a large team, case managers, teachers, special ed teachers, psychologists, all these things, social workers, clinicians. But it is a process to try and get students the free and appropriate education for all, IDEA, IDEA Act, et cetera. All this is by law required. it is something that public schools absolutely have to provide. Private schools do not. Private schools do not have to honor IEPs, but public schools. So I don't know if that answered. That's a general overview. I'm not sure what the exact, was there more specific from the question?
I think it was, yeah, what is the best course of action? It sounds like, I have unstable internet, unfortunately, it looks like again. But can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Great. So the general idea is, public schools, you have government funding for this and have to require it. So it may be a course to pursue the public schools.
Yes, and definitely ask for an IEP in order to get this legal document. So that's usually CPS has a Office of Diverse Learners and Support Systems, so support services. So that is, you need to formally request it. But once you get into that system, then yes, it will benefit your child.
Wonderful. All right. Does anybody have any other questions? It looks like we've covered the ones that.
Julie.
Amen. Anybody have anything else?
And let me show this calendar. Okay, I think I'm going to share that now. So we do have the CSG, sorry, Chicago School GPS calendar. And what I try and do on here is put down the schools that I know of. Let's say you're not looking at high school, you're only looking at elementary or maybe preschool, so you can just turn those on. Tomorrow, Blaine has a tour, and I usually try and absolutely give you the source of where I got this. So here, view tab. So I opened up. So Blaine, I tried to, from what I was sharing earlier. Okay, I give you the place to find it. To confirm, to confirm, because schools sometimes I put these on and they change. So I definitely want you to take a look and double check. Okay, but that's our calendar. So that has a lot of options to look at different types of schools. Public is green, private is red. Some just younger years, I do it in light blue. So it's a resource for families to look at. But again, it's not exhaustive. This is literally a labor of love that I physically put on this calendar. So if you don't see a school there, email me. I'll put it on, that sort of thing. So we just tell everybody, though, that, there's check multiple calendars and double check dates and times before, and let us know of any that we missed. But independent schools also have, and CPS also can list their options. So, oh no, Julie,
The links to the calendar. There you are.
Okay, I see you.
Okay, good. I don't know. It's bizarre on my end, so I apologize for the bad connection.
We see you.
Okay, great. Well, we will send all the recaps to everyone and the links that you shared, Grace. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And we will send the recording to everyone as well. And this is always a wonderful presentation. So thank you, Grace. We truly appreciate it.
Always my pleasure, Julie. Thanks for hosting.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.